And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off.
Go ahead and say it, Ed. Go Tigers!
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
You like that? You like that?
F it. Jamar's down there somewhere.
The New Orleans Saints select Marcus Davenport.
No!
Splash Brothers. Yeah.
It's playoff. Keep going, Brace.
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Welcome to Chasing the Trophy Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Sanders, coming at you for the Week 6 Waiver Wire episode. And, man, lots to go over on this week coming up. Could be a big week, could be just a terrible week. It's just a lot of players that are just kind of in the mix for a lot of good opportunity coming up, especially with bye weeks and everything. But first, we're going to get on into it, and we'll start with a word of prayer. Lord, just thank you for all the blessings and everything you've done for us. Just thank you for continuing to just give us the opportunity to talk about this game that we love and fellowship in it, and hopefully use it as a tool to bring people closer to you and to know you, Lord. And please just be with Nora Case. She's undergoing her immunizations and her building up her immune system again, and her and the Merediths are getting back to somewhat of a normalcy life, Lord, as we're just thankful for all the miracles you worked in their life. And just please be with Crew Tidwell and his family as you're working some of those same miracles for them, Lord, and just be with them, give them strength and comfort as they're going through this process. And please be with Mama T and comfort her, and be with the Nora family and the rest of their family, and give them comfort as she's going through this stage of life, Lord, and hopefully preparing her, and she's prepared to come to see you, Lord. And just thank you for all the blessings she's done for her family, and that they've blessed her. Just be with them during this time. Please be with the victims of the Hurricane Helene, and all the first responders and everybody involved, as it seems to be a real, still just a lot going on there, Lord. Just give those people peace, comfort, and just put a hedge of protection around those people trying to help all the people there, Lord. And also, please just be with the people in the path of Hurricane Milton, as it seems like it's primed to cause a lot of destruction and everything. Just put a hedge of protection, if it be your will. Just let it dissipate in the Gulf, Lord, for some unknown reason. And if people don't understand, then let them turn to you, Lord. Just but if that's not your will, just be with these people and help them turn to you in this time, as they're preparing for this hurricane coming toward Florida in the Gulf, Lord. And just thank you for giving us all these opportunities. Just please let us be a light for you, and to guide and just help and show people that you're the way, the truth, and the light, Lord. It's your name we pray. Amen. All right, guys. So jumping right on in. Thank our sponsors, Big Reed BBQ, Mimi's Children's Boutique, Crown Detailing. Our title sponsor for this episode is Mimi's Children's Boutique, located in Jonesboro, that fulfills all clothing needs for your little ones. Owners, Melissa Johnson and Megan Harrell, offer children and baby boutique brand clothing, accessories, vinyl print t-shirts, and so much more. You can find them on Main Street in Jonesboro from 10 to 6 Tuesday through Friday, and 10 to 2 on Saturday. Y'all go check them out. If you got any favorite college football teams and you want to dress up your kids, that they are the place to go for that, especially around Jonesboro. And then also, I did see a Facebook post the other day. Big Reed BBQ has got mango, I believe it was mango habanero, or pineapple, maybe it was pineapple. Hang on. Yeah, I got me one of them now. Anyway, they got a new sauce coming out, guys. So be on the lookout for that for Big Reed BBQ. Excited for them. They've had the spicy and then the mild, but this is going to be a little something different. So if you're interested in checking that out, be watching for when it drops. Yeah, pineapple habanero. My bad, guys. Pineapple habanero. I'm so used to mango. There's a lot of mango. Yeah, pineapple habanero right here. This Saturday, October the 12th, at Doug Damona Farm and Feed Trade Days. So they're going to debut that sauce there. Holler at Andre Leonard, as he will be there repping that. So We appreciate them sponsoring us for this long time. And now we're going to go ahead and get right on into it, guys. There's a ton of news and injuries. I say news. So Devontae Adams is seeking a trade. He's been sitting out, waiting for that. And then everybody in the fantasy community is pretty much just sitting on pins and needles, waiting to see where he goes. AJ Brown will return this week. That's another one we've been watching. Jonathan Taylor, let's see. He said Friday that he was ruled out, and he's going to at least miss that this past week. There's no new update there. Nico Collins comes up with a hamstring injury, and they are labeling him week to week. And it says, a beat writer for the Texans, it's going to take a couple of weeks for a hamstring, is what D'Amico Ryans told him. So we'll evaluate him on a week-to-week basis. So that sounds like he's probably not going to play this week. So be on the lookout there. There's one guy that Xavier Hutchinson, he didn't make the list because this has not been, whenever I wrote this article, there was no designation for that. But he could be a beneficiary. But, there's so many mouths to feed already between Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz in that pass catching. They could be more beneficiaries than Xavier Hutchinson, but Xavier Hutchinson did come in the game and was somewhat productive. And then George Kittle emerged with a rib injury. He was limited Tuesday. He'll be fine. Malik Neighbors missed last week with that concussion, and there's been no new update yet. And that's why typically on this pod I don't cover, because there's not a lot of updates for a lot of these guys yet. Devon Achane left the game with a concussion. They're on a bye this week, so he should be back. Travis Etienne had got, quote unquote, popped real good, is what Doug Peterson said, on his shoulder. And just left while I listened to another pod. And so Doug Peterson's one of those coaches that apparently, according to what he says in press conferences, is about 35% accurate compared to what is actually going on. So he's not one of those like Sean McVay that actually tells you the truth in the press conference, or either maybe he just doesn't know. I don't know. I always thought I liked Doug Peterson as a coach, but either way, he's only about 35% accurate on what he says in those press conferences. So just keep that in mind as Doug Peterson talks about the Jacksonville situation. But either way, ETN banged up with a shoulder injury. Tank Bigsby looked great. We're going to talk about him in a little bit. So there's a lot of that to be talked about. Joe Mixon, they don't know if he's going to return for this week's game against New England or not. But, man, he didn't practice at all last week and hasn't practiced this week yet. I don't think it looks good. Aaron Jones come out of his game with a hip injury. He is getting some imaging. Kevin O'Connell. They came out with this last night. Okay. Said his hip continues to be evaluated. So they were getting imaging yesterday or Monday, and now they're still evaluating, and he's considered week to week. Big news right there. Breaking on the Chasing the Trophy podcast for you right there. That's getting reported from Alec Lewis from The Athletic. I'm guessing a beat writer for Minnesota Vikings. But week to week, now they have a bye this week. Aaron Jones has a bye this week, so he should have at least a couple weeks to recover. But, I mean, if it's something that's multiple weeks, Ty Chandler is high on that waiver priority, guys. Devontae Smith was out with a concussion before. He should be fine. He had a whole week to come back. No news. Cooper Kupp said, Sean McVay said Monday that a week 7 return for Kupp would be an ideal target. So an optimistic target. So there you go. Cooper Kupp, he's on bye this week. So they're looking at the week after the bye as an ideal time for Cooper Kupp. I know those Cooper Kupp owners are excited and happy to hear that. Zach Moss, and let's see, he's believed to be okay after a right ankle injury in the fourth quarter. It was right at the end of the game, and he actually did come back in the game, but they never officially ruled him out for the game. It was right at the end, like he was like third to last play or something. I think came back in to block one more time or something like that, but they said he believed to be okay. No new update on that. Devin Singletary ended up getting ruled out with a groin injury. right before last week. No new update there, but keep an eye if Tyrone Tracy's available out there. We're going to talk about him in a little bit. Anthony Richardson, with that oblique injury, still no update really, but Shane Steichen, the head coach for the Colts, did come out and say Monday that Richardson is our starting quarterback when he returns to full health. Now, that could be a very misleading statement because when he says returns to full health, not when he's able to return, just when he's fully healthy. So, I mean, that could take some time. And Joe Flacco looked pretty good. That'd be great news for the fantasy production of the Colts. So keep an eye on Anthony Richardson, even though you're probably not starting him if he is ready to play at this point. Evan Ingram, Doug Peterson said Monday that he's optimistic that Ingram will be cleared to play for Sunday. And that was last week. And as you know, Evan Ingram was not cleared to play. So there just goes more of a testament to Doug Peterson's optimism. So keep an eye on Evan Ingram, but he should probably be available this week because I think he was fairly close last week. David Njoku came back from that ankle injury, played like a quarter, hurt his knee, going to get evaluated. Who knows? David Njoku seems like one of those players now. He's starting to break down. He's 28 years old at tight end. Not saying that he's done, but it just seems like he can't stay healthy to save his life. All right. So Rashee Rice, nobody knew. Now is expected to require 4 months to make a full recovery from the season-ending surgery he underwent Tuesday, which was yesterday, to repair his LCL in his right knee. Apparently there was no damage to his MCL or his ACL or his meniscus, which is really surprising. He had an LCL injury like that, and then MCL, ACL, and meniscus were fine. But anyway, they were, but they also had to repair a hamstring tendon in the back of his knee also. So Rashee Rice is going to miss the rest of the season. Sorry, guys. But we do have an answer for you there in that locker room as of right now. Let's see. Khalil Shakir ended up missing last week. No new update there, but he did not play. Aaron Rodgers, banged up. He's 40. He's playing in the NFL. If he gets hit, he's banged up, so no surprise there. Samir White ended up getting ruled out last week and with that groin injury, and no new update there, but that's interesting. So if he's out in the mix, and makes Alexander Mattison a lot more appealing. Jaylen Warren got ruled out last week with that knee injury and did not play. And then this week, Mike Tomlin came out and said that Jaylen Warren is doubtful to be available for this Sunday's game. I mean, God, what is going on with Jaylen Warren? This knee, I feel like he should have went on the IR. I mean, he hurt it in week 3. He's about 4, 5, and 6. And then, so I guess he could come back next week, but they already said he's doubtful. So if you got him, he might be available in your leagues, just not really somebody you're probably looking to add, but he's still banged up. Christian Watson with that high ankle sprain was inactive. No new update. Davian Wicks looked like hot garbage. So there's that. So Christian Watson's role seems to be safe when he's ready to come back. Xavier Legette, talented rookie that we talked up, come out and got hurt after one play. Caught the ball, got hit. It looks like an AC joint injury. He said he fully expects to suit up for Sunday's divisional matchup against the Falcons, but he's undergoing further imaging. That was on Monday. No new update there. Another little tidbit, Tua is expected to possibly return as soon as eligible from the IR. So he's scheduled for an expert consultation. This was from Monday. Mike McDaniel, expert consultation. They're on bye this week. And Mike McDaniel said everything is good so far with him. Also emerging from Monday night's game, from the Saints debacle against the Chiefs, because our offensive line is completely incapable of pretty much holding water in a bucket or blocking anybody of any sorts. And pretty much Derek Carr got smoked because of it right at the end of the game, and now he is expected to miss multiple games due to a left oblique injury. He got hit in the side, kind of the back, and you could tell he was hurt. He came out. Hayner finished the game, and I believe they're saying Spencer Rattler might be coming in to play. They're preparing for him to be the starting quarterback to see what he can do. So And he's a pretty good runner, so he might be somebody to look for in deeper leagues. But that's going to round out our injury and news updates. And let's jump right on into our waiver wire targets. And number one for me is Geno Smith, owned in 50.9% leagues. He's QB7 in 6-point per touchdown passing leagues and QB5 in 4-point per touchdown passing leagues because of that rushing upside. And after this week, he has the most pass attempts to this point in the season in the NFL. He's completing these at over 70%. He's yet to throw more than one touchdown in a game so far. So that means there's probably going to be positive regression because he's not going to just throw one touchdown per game all year when he's throwing the most attempts in the NFL. And so there's that also. So he could probably get better. He's still running the ball at least 4.5 times a game. And he's got there's bye weeks coming up. Dude, he is the number one option for me at quarterback. And honestly, he's starting to look like he did when he finished like QB3 on the year or QB2 a couple of years ago. And offensive coordinator, great weapons. Their defense isn't looking as good as it has been in the past, so they might be in more shootouts. I mean, sky's the limit right now for Geno. And he said he didn't write back, and he sure didn't. So he's easily the best quarterback to fill in at for the waiver wire, and only owned at 50% leagues and bye weeks. I think you could do worse. He's got San Francisco this week, but it really sounds scarier than it really is. They have not been as good of a defense as they had in the past. Number two for me is going to be Kirk Cousins. 509 yards, 4 touchdowns on Thursday Night Football. A lot of people might forget about that being on Thursday and all the other excitement that happened over the weekend. Cousins jumps to QB 11. He was like QB 25. And then, bam, QB 11 after one game, 500 yards, 4 touchdowns. Dude, there's some quarterbacks that are starting right now that don't have 500 yards on the season. And anyway, it's crazy Thursday Night Football, but this is what the Falcons offense is capable of. I'm not saying this is what you should expect on a week-to-week basis, but he's an excellent bye-week replacement for sure and a bench quarterback. And honestly, somebody, if you got Patrick Mahomes to be starting and sit Mahomes until they figure out which they're winning games in Kansas City, so they're really not figured out what Mahomes is worried about his fantasy production. So if you got Mahomes, you sit him, you pick up somebody like Kirk Cousins and start him until Mahomes really gets it going. But either way, I think we've seen what this Atlanta Falcons offense is capable of with him, and he's only owned in 45% of leagues. And also, they have Carolina this week at Carolina, which is a juicy matchup. And so I like Kirk Cousins. Number 3 is going to be Caleb Williams, 44.6% owned. He's really starting to be the fantasy producer that some of us thought. Like, I knew he would produce fantasy points, but not really be winning. And he's not really winning, but he's definitely not the fantasy producer a lot of analysts thought he was going to be coming in and just being a world beater, but he's definitely serviceable for a bye and injury replacement and maybe even Patrick Mahomes replacement, but he's still kind of a matchup-based streamer with a lot of upside. But this week, he gets the Jacksonville defense, which is the worst defense against quarterbacks in the NFL. They're giving up an average of 30 points per game to quarterbacks in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues, including they just let Flacco give up 40. They gave up 40 points to him this past week. And then, so now Caleb Williams gets Jacksonville. He goes on a bye. So if he blows up again, you might try to sell him. Or, drop him for the next best thing. But either way, a lot of opportunity for Caleb Williams. He has a pretty solid schedule going forward for him and that offense. So I like him a lot. Daniel Jones coming in at 4. Here he goes again on his own, man. Like Jones is starting to put it back together again. We've seen this before as he's been very fantasy relevant as a quarterback, especially with his upside ability at rushing the ball. Without Neighbors, had the best fantasy game of the season and last season, including 11 rushes at this game. So now he's going to get Cincinnati's defense at home, who's been absolutely terrible against dual threat quarterbacks. And yes, Daniel Jones is a dual threat quarterback. If you run the ball 11 times in a game like you did last week, you're a dual threat quarterback. I don't care what anybody thinks. And but anyway, they've been terrible against dual threat quarterbacks. They gave up 348 and 4 touchdowns to Lamar last week. Not saying he's Lamar, but he's got a lot of upside against Cincinnati's defense. And you might argue Jones has more talented pass catchers than Lamar Jackson does. And that is a very true statement with Malik Neighbors, Wandale Washington, and Wandale Robinson, my goodness, and Devin Singletary if he comes back. If not, that young rookie Tracy's pretty talented as well. But yeah, that's Daniel Jones, fully owned in 13.9% leagues. Number 4, number 5 is going to be Jared Goff. Coming off his bye, a lot of people dropped him. He's not been really, really good this year, but he looked a lot better right before his bye week, coming off 100% completion percentage with 18 pass attempts for 292 yards and 2 touchdowns. 18 for 18 for 292 and 2 touchdowns. Crazy. But I feel like Goff and this O-line will be well rested and ready to completely take advantage of a heavily injured Dallas DST this week. And They've only been 21st against quarterbacks so far this season. And a lot of people forget Goff has been a top 10 fantasy quarterback the last 2 seasons. And there's no reason to think that's going to change this year. I just think he got off to a little slow start. And I think they're going to come off this bye healthy and fire it on all cylinders. And then last but not least, this is not really on the list, but Sam Darnold had a rough outing right before he's on bye this week. Rough outing. A lot of people might have dropped him. 55% owned in fantasy right now, so still meets the requirements, but he's on a bye this week, so you're not picking him up for this week. But if you can pick him up, he had one of the worst performances of the season against the New York Giants defense. Is very smothering. I mean, they look good, and but he's still QB10 on the season. And after his bye, he's going to get a matchup at Detroit at home, who's one of the worst secondaries in the NFL and can't hold anybody. Then he's going to get the Rams. Then he's going to get the Colts. Then he's going to get Jacksonville. And then he's going to get Tennessee Titans. And then finally, a not-so-great matchup against Chicago. So you see where I'm going here. Like, after his bye, he is going to be locked in like starter for several weeks. And especially bye weeks coming up. I mean, I think if somebody drops him, you can pick him up, stash him. I think that'd be great. And that's going to round out our quarterbacks. And we're going to jump right on into our running backs, which is a hodgepodge of all sorts of opportunity, some handcuffs, some stash. But the ones that I like the most this week, Tank Bigsby coming in 9.5%. You know, I should have said something about him last week. There's some analysts talking about him, but I was like, he's just not really having an opportunity. Well, he got the opportunity this week. And he got the opportunity this week, and man, did he take full advantage of it. And he come out 27.9 fantasy points, 13 rushes for 101 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 catch on 1 target for 28 yards with only a 40% snap count, guys. Only a 40% snap count. He's just slowly taken over the running portion of this offense the last couple of weeks, and he started to eat into the goal line carries. They kind of split goal line carries between him and Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne got banged up with a shoulder injury. Bigsby is in the tops at running backs at all the advanced metrics for running backs, specifically ones dealing with broken tackles and explosive plays. Like, he's up there with the big guys, and he is starting to get more and more opportunity. I think Jacksonville's realizing that. We could easily see this turn into a 50-50 timeshare with him and ETN in this struggling offense, and they're just looking for a spark, and Bigsby's providing that spark. And now Doug Peterson, you know, there's rumors about him losing his job, and if you're, you know, they're talking about you losing your job, what do? You start making moves. And if Tank Bigsby's making big plays and making the game more exciting for your fans, management, well, I mean, you know, we could see that. And then there's also been some rumors that ETN could be a trade prospect, with Jacksonville kind of tanking the season, quote unquote, no pun intended, with Tank Bigsby. But with Jacksonville not doing great, ETN could get traded to some of these teams that are struggling at running back. And so that could be a possibility just to think about there. Number 2 for me is going to be Rico Dowdle, owned in 52.5% of leagues, 19.4 fantasy points, 20 carries, 87 yards, 2 catches, 2 targets on 27 yards, and a touchdown with just a 50% snap count. That is correct. Just half the snaps, and that's what he did, guys. So what that tells me, with all that usage in just 50% of the snaps, is that when he is in, he is like getting used, like he's getting the ball, and his usage rate is like through the roof. And this was kind of the breakout game that we've been kind of watching and talking about, and it was against a formidable Pittsburgh defense on the road at Pittsburgh. And I mean, if this doesn't let them know, like, and they won pretty much. I mean, not on the shoulders of him, Dak, too, because he threw a game-winning touchdown to Jalen Tolbert, but like they were in it with Rico Dowdle. Now he did fumble the ball late in the game, but he still got another big play after that. They went back to him. But, I mean, he is at least a serviceable RB2 replacement for you right now with high upside. If he gets the ball 70% of the game, like we're talking, I mean, high-end RB2, maybe a low-end RB1 if he's getting a lot of the goal line carries. So like Rico Dowdle a lot going forward. Number 3 is going to be Tyrone Tracy Jr., owned in 18.4% of fantasy leagues, and he's on a 63% snap count this past week, and he was not the starter. Gray was kind of the starter, comes in on the first series, fumbles the ball, and then here comes Tracy out of nowhere with a 18-carry, 129-yard stat line, 2 targets, 1 catch for 1 yard. Not exactly one of the breakouts that we were watching for at running back position this week, but when Devin Singletary got ruled out, Tracy was the one a lot of the analysts were predicting would have the most work, and then ended up Gray started, and a lot of analysts were probably like, holy mess, what happened? Then he fumbled, then Tracy comes in, and looks like the talent that everybody was talking about him in the preseason. But this was against a fairly solid Seattle run defense. And anyway, he was a highly touted rookie coming in. He is a transformed, like he was a wide receiver turned into a running back. So he's got one of those pass catching skill sets that they not even utilize. And so with that being said, like 18 for 129, and he didn't even get involved in the pass. He's got that workhorse skill set. Like he could be a 3-down back if they wanted him to be. Now, is that going to happen? Who knows? But with Singletary, for some reason, if he doesn't pan out, starts to be more inefficient, fumbles the ball, gets hurt again. I mean, the door has been opened now, and Tracy started to walk through, and I don't think Giants Dable could shut that door now. Even when Devin Singletary comes back, I think Tyrone Tracy's going to get some more work, and I think he's going to be somebody, if you pick him up and you played him good, I would not drop him. I just try to stash him on the bench because I think he's going to get some more opportunity. And then if Singletary gets hurt again, could be somebody that they end up just handing the reins over to in this backfield. So I think he could be in store for some more big weeks. They got the lowly Cincinnati defense at home who can't stop the running game. They can't stop the pass. They can't stop anybody. So if Tyrone Tracy ends up starting, Devin Singletary ends up being out with this, kind of a game, they might be like, we'll just let you get rest up. Tracy looked good. Let Singletary get fully healthy. And if that's the case, man, Tracy is easily an RB2 this week against Cincinnati at home. So he's definitely one to grab and could have rest of season value. And then Trey Sermon at number 4. Really, the reason he's at the bottom of this list is because Jonathan Taylor could come back, but also because he was extremely inefficient, like we thought. Owned in 49% fantasy leagues. He had a decent fantasy day. 10 carries for 38 yards, 1 touchdown, 6 targets, 6 catches for 26 yards. A lot more heavily involved in the passing game than we thought, but a 59% snap count. Trey Sermon filled in admirably for Taylor. I think he gave you about 18 fantasy points, but he could be back for this week if Taylor cannot play. But we just have to see. It was a high ankle sprain. Taylor thought he was coming back last week. He didn't. So maybe that means he will come back this week. But Sermon's in for a little bit tougher matchup this week against a Tennessee run defense that is above average. I think they're ranked about like 13th or 14th in the NFL against running backs so far this year. But a lot of Sermon's value hinges on also if Richardson returns, because if Richardson returns, he's not getting 6 targets and 6 catches out of the backfield. And then also, he might get some more rushes, but as inefficient as he is, I just think we see a lot more of a pedestrian stat line than what we seen last week with the 6 catches for 26 yards. So I think there's a lot of things to watch for as this situation unfolds, which is why he was last as far as my waiver wire ads at running back. But that's Trey Sermon at 49% owned. And then we're going to jump on into some handcuffs and stashes. And I listed some of these guys separate because it looks like their value is kind of capped at where they're sitting at right now, barring an injury or some kind of big coaching change, which did happen for one of them, but we don't know how it's going to pan out yet. But Bucky Irving at 57.4% is pretty much a high end handcuff right now. As things seem to have stabilized a little bit in Tampa Bay. White had a pretty big game Thursday night. I say pretty big. I mean, he had a couple big runs and several catches. He was definitely the primary back. It was about a 55-45 split, White to Irving. Irving looked good, but White looked good too. So it's like there's no need for them to move off White if White's still being productive and is the preferred pass catcher and pass blocker in this offense, especially as bad as their defense is. So for me right now, Bucky Irving's just a handcuff. He's a hold. He's don't get out. If you could sell him for a lot, do it. Because I don't know if this changes barring an injury to White. But anyway, he's somebody still to watch there. Bucky Irving. And then Braylon Allen, also another handcuff we've talked about before. Seen a step back in his usage this past week, but they also seen a step back where the Jets lost, and then they fired their head coach, Robert Saleh. Probably should have mentioned that in the news, but yeah, Robert Saleh, head coach for the Jets, got fired. Their defensive coordinator is going to take over. But Braylon Allen's on to 41.9% fantasy leagues. I've seen him dropped in several leagues already because last week his usage went down, but that might have something to do with why Saleh got fired, because he stopped using Allen and they lost, and Allen was very productive and very instrumental in the games that they were winning. So we've seen his snap count take a step back, but do not get rid of him yet because we don't know how this offense is going to look under a new coach. A lot of analysts have started to talk that there's a correlation between his playing and their winning. So, and I know that's crazy because Breece Hall's back there, but it also has a lot to do with what Rodgers wants. We don't know what Rodgers wants. Sorry, guys. Anyway, we don't know what Rodgers wants, so I would not get rid of Braylon Allen. I'd still stash him if you can, if you have the room. And during these, yeah, Braylon Allen's definitely somebody still not to get rid of for sure. So just kind of keep hanging on to him. And then another stash is Jalen Wright. These two guys, I got two stashes right here. These two guys are on bye week, but could have opportunity coming forward. Jalen Wright for Miami, owned in 8% of leagues. Devin Achane went out with a concussion. Wright comes in, goes 13 carries for 86 yards with 32% snap count. Very efficient. Now, he's on a bye, which is why he's not up at the top, obviously. But with the Mostert injuries, Jalen Wright looking good. He could have played himself into some more plays. Mike McDaniel's pretty much an offensive genius. So I would fully expect him to be trying to work Wright into the offense, at least here and there. And then if we see another injury from Achane, could get a lot more opportunity. So Wright's another fairly high-end handcuff, but keep an eye on Achane to make sure he's healthy when they come off this bye. Then Ty Chandler, like I talked to you right at the beginning of the show, Aaron Jones with that hip injury now labeled week to week. Well, Ty Chandler's owned in 34.9% of leagues, and he is pretty much the clear handcuff for Aaron Jones. He pretty much took over after the hip injury, and it was really deemed not serious originally, but it was tough sledding for Chandler against this Jets run defense. 14 for 30, 2 targets for 2 catches for 9 yards, but he had a 63% snap count, so he was the guy after Jones went down. Chandler looks like he could be in store for some extra playing time, depending on how serious this hip injury is with Jones. So he's somebody to pick up. He's on a bye this week, somebody to pick up and stash for the weeks to come. And if you remember, like I talked to you before with Sam Darnold, Minnesota has a pretty easy schedule coming up. So another thing to think about with Ty Chandler coming off this bye. Also, of course, stash Jonathan Brooks on the 62% of leagues. No new news has dropped, but he's still going to be very valuable when he comes back. Same thing with Nick Chubb on the 78% of leagues. He's been back at practice. They said he's looked really good. No word on a return date. I'm sure we'll find another update as we get closer to the week, but also another one to stash is Nick Chubb, who this Cleveland offense needs a much-needed boost, and I think Chubb could definitely produce that. Next would be our wide receivers, which is pretty much a crapshoot still, but we've got some opportunity guys here that they could be very beneficial for you, but definitely some to add that could help you going forward. But there's just kind of situational things going on here. But number one for me is going to be Josh Downs. Um, I mean, it has a lot to do with the quarterback, but also I'm a believer with, all right, so Downs this past week with Flacco, 12 targets and 9 catches for 69 yards on a 61% snap counts. In there 61% of the time, and he gets 12 targets. Now, Flacco threw the ball about 40 times, but and he does get a big boost with Flacco under center. But the word was before and after Josh Downs and Richardson are roommates on the road. And then also they room together during spring training and preseason. They have been said to have a connection. Now, we have not seen Richardson and Downs on the field a lot together, only one game, and then Downs only played like that was his first game back, and then Richardson got hurt in that game. So they've not been on the field much together. But if Downs and Richardson have that connection, and Downs ends up being Richardson's number one go-to guy, Downs is very talented, very productive, and very efficient at what he does. And I mean, there's still really good upside here, even when Richardson comes back. And I think it's just too much to pass up. So that's why he's my wide receiver number one pickup for this week. Number two for me. All right, so he's number one for this week for sure. Now, rest of season right now, number one, which he is number 4 on this list because he's not playing this week. But number 4, Juju Smith-Schuster, come out of Monday night's game against New Orleans. He's only in a 4% fantasy leagues for the Chiefs. 8 targets, 7 catches for 130 yards on a 67% snap count. Now, we've seen Juju be very productive with the Chiefs before, and then he got hurt, concussion, ankle injury, ended up not working out, and then Rashee Rice stepped up. This was last year at the beginning of the year, if you don't forget. But we've seen Juju and Kelsey step up in the absence of Rashee Rice, and they're pretty much been the primary beneficiaries. And if Juju is that wide receiver, and he keeps getting these 8-9 targets a game from Patrick Mahomes, he is somebody that needs to be owned. And he might not be Rashee Rice's production that he had so far this year, but he could definitely be a wide receiver too. So he's somebody that you need to pick up, but he's on a bye this week. So if you need somebody this week, he's not your guy. But if you need somebody going forward, Juju is somebody. For me, if you need somebody going forward for the rest of the season, he's probably number 1 right now. Now, does that mean that they don't go and sign another wide receiver or Xavier Worthy, who they tried to work in a little bit more, but still just doesn't quite have the experience? Justin Watson didn't get any targets. Mecole Hardman had like 1. I'm trying to temper expectations, but the way it looked, Juju seems to be the replacement for Rashee Rice, with a little less production and a little bit more production going to Kelsey. But Kelsey just doesn't have it like he used to. You can tell he's not as young as he used to be. But that's for me. Juju's number 1 if you don't need anybody this week and he's on a bye, and they don't acquire anybody through a trade over their bye week. But number 1, if you need somebody this week, Josh Downs. Number 2 for me this week, if you need somebody, Jalen Tolbert. Owned in 7.6% of leagues, 10 targets, 7 catches for 87 yards and a touchdown this past week. Brandon Cooks had a surgery on his knee, ended up getting infected. They put him on an IR. Does not sound great. Could be something that could linger all season. Who knows? But either way, Cooks is out. Tolbert's in. Clay told me last week, he asked me about Tolbert, and I was like, I like Tolbert. I just don't know where where his opportunities could come from with Cooks still being in there. Well, then next thing you know, Cooks gets put on IR right before the weekend. Tolbert comes out and goes off. So I should have listened to you, Clay, because somehow you knew something was coming. And that was a pretty good production on your part for sure. Prediction on your part for sure. So Jalen Tolbert looks like he's the wide receiver 2 in Dallas right now, who's throwing the ball the second most in the NFL right behind Seattle. So I like Jalen Tolbert a lot going forward. If you need help now, he is definitely, especially during bye weeks, he's definitely somebody to keep an eye on. And he has outproduced Lamb over the last 2 weeks, which is crazy. Now, I don't think that continues the rest of the season, but that just goes to show you that he can be very productive in this offense as the wide receiver 2, which we've seen from Cooks before also. So like Jalen Tolbert at number 2, wide receiver. Number 3, still going to be Dontavion Wicks. Like I said, I like Juju better rest of season out of all these guys, and then I like Downs and Tolbert better than Wicks, but Wicks still saw 7 targets. He only had 2 catches for 20 yards on a 76% snap count, which is a lot of involvement. I know he definitely did not live up to the hype. Honestly, he looked like hot garbage because he dropped a ton of balls, but I'm trying not to give up on him yet. He's still a young wide receiver. Jordan Love and him still have some kind of chemistry, and I just don't think that goes away. They get Arizona this week. If Christian Watson is out, Dobbs is supposed to be back. If Watson is out, I think Wick still gets another chance. He could deliver. And if he does, I think he's still a solid flex play with upside. But if he does deliver big, you might think about trading him because when Watson comes back, I think he does go back to just being kind of a backup wide receiver that comes in every now and then for a gadget play because of his drops right now. I think that's a big problem. But if he fails again this week, I think you definitely got to cut ties from him and go ahead and find somebody else. But he's at number 3 because he plays this week. These are the next 2 guys, which is Juju, and then the next guy I'm going to talk about don't play. They're on bye. So that's why he's at number 3. Because if you need somebody this week, I think he can still be productive for you. It's just I like Downs and Tolbert better. Then number 5 for me is going to be Jordan Whittington, owned in 11.2% fantasy leagues. 10 targets, 7 catches for 89 yards on a 92% snap count. He's had two very productive last 2 weeks for the Rams. It looks like Jordan Whittington was the guy while Kupp was gone. Well, I don't know if you heard me, but Kupp's expected back in week 7, which is they're on a bye this week. That's why I said Whittington is not on this list because he's on a bye. But Kupp's expected back in week 7, which is fine. But I think he's just a more stable and efficient option than Tutu. I think Tutu's going to be a gadget player. I think Whittington's going to be out there with Kupp. And I think with his production, he's going to more likely be able to sustain this in this offense with Kupp back. Now, when Kupp and Puka come back, I don't think he has hardly any value. But with just Kupp back after the bye, I think Whittington still could perform. And honestly, it could make it easier for him because Kupp's going to get that number 1 coverage and Whittington is going to be on the second cornerback. So I would keep an eye on that, but he's somebody you might want to pick up and stash if you got a spot to stash and don't get any of these other guys to stash. So just something to think about there with Jordan Whittington and the Rams. And then 2 guys that did not make the cut because they were over the threshold just by a little bit, but they are by far and away the number 1 guys if they're available in your league, but it's just because they didn't make it. Darnell Mooney, 69.2% fantasy leagues. He's a wide receiver 13 so far in PPR this season, and that's pretty much all I need to tell you. He's wide receiver 13, and he's the number 2 wide receiver on his team in Atlanta, but he is getting a ton of volume. And he's definitely the number 1 ad if he's available. And then number 2 is Jacoby Myers, 65.5% leagues. He's had at least 9 targets the last 3 weeks. Devontae Adams has requested a trade and said he's not going to play till he gets one. So Jacoby Myers is the de facto number 1 wide receiver in Las Vegas now. And he should have a solid floor for the rest of the season as a wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside with touchdowns, So with Adams out, I think Jacoby Myers, solid wide receiver 2 rest of the season with that volume in this offense. And we've seen him be very productive with that opportunity before. So like Jacoby Myers a lot, owning 65.5% leagues. So definitely somebody to be looking for. Now moving on to tight ends. Man, tough category this week, guys, honestly. Like, 'cause you got some guys that were productive, they're going on bye. Then you got some guys that have been productive, but it's like you don't know what's going on in their situations. Then you got some guys that were productive, they hadn't been productive, but they could be productive. And then, so it's a lot. I got 4 options for y'all here. None of them are nothing to write home about, but number 1's got to be Tyler Conklin, who's been the most consistent for sure. Owned at 37% of fantasy leagues, 9 targets, 6 catches for 55 yards, 82% snap count. He's honestly becoming a reliable, stable option at tight end, but he's still only owned at 37% of fantasy leagues, and he's been performing at a low end tight end 1 without a touchdown. If he gets a touchdown, you're probably talking high end tight end 1 every week, And Aaron Rodgers doesn't really throw a ton to his tight end in the red zone, unfortunately. So you probably won't see that too much, but at least he's getting constant targets. I think he's had at least like 7 or 6 targets, I think, for the last 3 weeks. So, but I like Tyler Conklin. He's number 1 for sure. Number 2 is going to be Zach Ertz this week, for the sake of bye weeks. 8 targets, 48% owned, 8 targets, 2 catches for 10 yards last week, but he had a 57% snap count. He's been fairly reliable for most of the year. This past week was rough, but he's been fairly reliable. He's got a solid matchup this week, though, against Baltimore, who's the 29th defense against tight ends, allowing on average 14 points to a tight end per game this year so far. So I like Zach Ertz. He's still a very talented pass catching tight end. Jane Daniels is playing great and throwing the ball well. So I like Ertz opportunities this week against a Baltimore defense that can't stop a tight end. So I like Zach Ertz a lot this week. Number 3 is going to be Cade Otton. If you want a tight end that was on the field the most, he'd be number 1 in the league. Because he's at like 100% snap count, like 3 out of the 5 games have been played so far. But anyway, 16.6% fantasy percent owned, 4 targets, 3 catches for 44 yards. And I think those were all in like the first half last week because I kept seeing him catch the ball, and I was like, man, I should have put him on the waiver pod. And coming looking at this week, I'm like, he's got to be on there because there ain't nobody else. But 100% snap count, not quite the production after the first half that we're looking for, but still good production as a fantasy tight end so far this year. Now he gets the New Orleans defense that is only 22nd against the tight end so far this year, which is they've had some big games and then they've had some good games. So it's kind of been back and forth, but Cade Otton's out there. He's involved. As bad as Tampa Bay defense has been, they're going to be in a lot of shootouts. And if they're throwing the ball, Cade Otton at least gets a portion of that pie. He's really somebody that you could hang on to all year. He's not going to probably win you a week, but he's at least going to be a stable, floor of, probably 6 fantasy points a week. He gets a touchdown, add that to it. If not, you're probably looking at 6-7 points a week. I think he's got a better opportunity to produce than most guys, but Cade Otton definitely. And there's a lot of analysts that think he's number 1 this week. I'm not quite that high on him. I like Conklin and Ertz better, but I do think he could be very productive if you're looking for help. And then number 4 is going to be Colby Parkinson. He's on bye. So, I got a guy on here that's on bye. But he's on 47.6% of fantasy leagues. But honestly, I really think it's just taking a little bit longer than we thought for him and Stafford to get on the same page. Last week, 13 targets, 7 catches for 52 yards. 13 targets at tight end. Last time that happened was Isaiah Likely in week 1. And everybody thought he was going to win their league for him. Now, he didn't end up panning out. He caught a touchdown this past week, and he could have been on this list. But honestly, they've got 3 tight ends there in Baltimore, and they don't know what to do with any of them. That's a whole other podcast in itself. But anyway, Colby Parkinson's on bye this week. So if you don't need anybody, he's probably going to get dropped. And you could probably drop him if you need the bench space. But when he comes back, Kupp's coming back. That's going to take some pressure and put more coverage on the outside. It's going to open up the middle of the field more. Colby Parkinson is going to be able to deliver now that he's got more of that chemistry involved, more of that chemistry and more of that experience with Stafford, knowing what he wants. He led the team in targets. He's heavily involved in the passing game. And honestly, they were very competitive with Green Bay strictly because of his involvement. And out of the bye, he gets Las Vegas. And I think he maintains his involvement even with Coop and Kupp. Even with Kupp coming back now, Kupp and Puka, his production probably goes down a pretty good bit. But I think that his Stafford and his experience, his chemistry and experience with Stafford over the last couple of weeks has been enough to kind of help him sustain some value as a tight end in this offense. And so Colby Parkinson's number 4 for me, even though he is on bye this week. So if you need somebody this week, don't pick him up, guys. Wait till next week. But anyway, Colby Parkinson. Now, that's all for tight ends. Really don't have a lot more to go on there. And then streaming defenses this week. It's kind of a tough week a little bit. Couple decent options. Number 1 for me is going to be Chicago's defense at home against Jacksonville. Chicago's already the number 3 defense so far this season. Now they're back at home with one of the worst offenses until last week in the league. Jacksonville looked better, but now they're going to Chicago. But Jacksonville also looked better against a struggling Indianapolis defense. So let's think about that. But Chicago's got one of the best secondaries in the NFL. Now they're in Chicago. The weather's tough there. Trevor Lawrence plays in Florida for his career. He's not, and honestly, I don't think he has a great reputation for being a decent cold weather quarterback. So, and it's going to probably be pretty cold in Chicago. So anyway, I think there's a solid chance that Jacksonville turns back into a pumpkin this week. Little Halloween Cinderella reference there, but I think Chicago's defense will be able to feast on Jacksonville's offense this week. Next will be Houston's defense at New England, owned in 20.9% of fantasy leagues. New England's offense has just been struggling all year. Now there's word Drake May is going to start this week. So you're getting a rookie quarterback starting at Houston on the road. And I think Houston takes full advantage. I think even if Drake May does well, who has good wheels, but even if he does pretty well, I think he's going to have some turnovers, and I think Houston can make the most of those. And really, New England's starved of playmakers. So I think that it's just going to be hard for them to put up much points against this Houston defense on the road. And then Green Bay's last for me. I still like their secondary. Green Bay's defense produces a ton of turnovers. They're number 5 DST on the year. They're only owned in 29.8% of fantasy leagues. They're going up against Arizona, who's kind of middle of the pack offense, but we've seen Arizona's offense lay some eggs this year. And I think Green Bay creates enough turnovers and pressure that I think it gives them opportunities for touchdowns, not to mention their offense has been very good at controlling the ball this year. And I think that limits Arizona's offense being on the field with Green Bay controlling the ball in time of possession. So I think Green Bay's defense is very serviceable, especially as available as they are. And anytime that defense can create turnovers, that gives them opportunity to score points. And that's what you want. So I think Green Bay could give Arizona some trouble, but either way, I think you could do worse than starting them. And they might be somebody you just kind of start and kind of let roll each week with their turnover ability. And that's going to round out our streaming defenses for the week. And then kickers, not much to them, not much changed. Chris Boswell, number one for me has got to be Austin Seibert for Washington. I mean, he's owning 60% of leagues by now, which he should be. But Washington is just moving the ball and creating so much offensive opportunity. He's the number 6 kicker in fantasy so far this year, and he didn't even play week 1, guys. I mean, missed a whole week. He's number 6 in kicker. So this week he's at Baltimore. Don't love the area or the weather there, but his opportunity is there, and he's somebody you add and you pretty much plug in and you wait till his bye week. Chris Boswell at number 2 at Las Vegas, great place to kick, great opportunity for Pittsburgh. They're moving the ball. Their offense is looking decent. He's the number 4 kicker so far in fantasy. He's only owned 57% league, so Chris Boswell I like. And then somebody not owned as much, but we've talked about before that had a down week. I kind of took him off the list. Then I probably should have put him back on, but I didn't. But Chase McLaughlin at New Orleans in the Dome, 30% owned, number 8 kicker in fantasy. Tampa Bay's offense is going to move the ball. They're going to give him opportunities, and he's kicking in New Orleans in that Dome. So I like the chances there. And then one guy that I did not put on this list that I do think with Drake May coming in that played 100% of the snaps for his team at wide receiver this past week is Jalen Polk, somebody I was high on coming in, didn't really pan out, and now he played 100% of the snaps last week in New England. Jalen Polk at wide receiver. Now Drake May's coming in. I've heard rumors from a couple beat writers who said they have a connection because they've played together, second team a fair amount this year. And I think Jalen Polk could be looking at a breakout game coming up in the next couple weeks with Drake May under center. So that's another person to keep an eye on is Drake May. But that's going to round out this and wind up this episode of the Waiver Wire for week 6. Thank you to everybody that listens. Please like, subscribe, download, share, follow us, all your streaming applications of choice. We really appreciate all the support. Thank you to our sponsors. Keep all the prayer requests in your thoughts and prayers for sure. And we appreciate y'all. We'll come back at y'all end of this week with Start Sit Sleeper. If we don't get it recorded, then at least be looking for the graphic on the Facebook page. And Clay should have got this graphic out for this one out yesterday. So y'all just keep chasing that trophy. Good luck this week.
This ain't how it's supposed to be. It should be just you and me.